In just 57 seconds, one of Britain's most beloved actors completely lost his patience, threw down his microphone, and stormed off a morning television set, leaving the host speechless and the crew in absolute chaos. What started as a friendly chat about movies turned into a fiery explosion of anger, accusations, and one of the most dramatic exits ever witnessed on daytime TV. Before we get into this absolute car crash of an interview, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. We bring you daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals, the biggest celebrity meltdowns, and all the drama the mainstream media won't show you. You don't want to miss what's coming next. The cameras were rolling on what should have been a pleasant morning on the Lorraine show. Michael Caine, the legendary actor known for his roles in everything from The Italian Job to The Dark Knight, had agreed to come on and talk about his incredible career spanning over 6 decades. He walked onto the set wearing a sharp gray suit, his trademark glasses perched on his nose, looking every bit the distinguished gentleman everyone expected. Lorraine Kelly greeted him with her usual warm smile and enthusiastic energy. The audience clapped as Michael settled into the bright orange chair across from her. The set looked cheerful with its colorful backdrop and morning sunlight streaming through the windows. Everything seemed perfectly normal. "Michael, lovely to have you here," Lorraine said, leaning forward with her hands clasped together. "Now, I want to talk about your new book. But first, I have to ask about something that's been on everyone's mind." Michael nodded politely, adjusting his position in the chair. "Go ahead." "There's been quite a bit of discussion lately about some of your older films," Lorraine continued, her voice taking on a slightly different tone. "Particularly some of the comments your characters made about women. Do you think those films hold up today?" Michael's expression remained neutral, but there was a slight pause before he responded. "Well, Lorraine, those films were made in a different era. Context matters quite a bit in these situations. But don't you think, as someone with such influence, you have a responsibility to address those issues?" Lorraine pressed, not letting it go. "I think," Michael said slowly, "that people are intelligent enough to understand that a film made in 1965 reflects the attitudes of 1965, not 2025. I was an actor playing a character. That's what actors do." Lorraine smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Right, but you chose those roles, didn't you? Nobody forced you to say those lines." The audience had gone quiet now, sensing something shifting in the atmosphere. Michael straightened up in his chair, his jaw tightening just slightly. "Are we here to discuss my career? Or are we here for you to lecture me about choices I made 60 bloody years ago?" Michael asked, his famous voice carrying an edge that hadn't been there moments before. "I'm just asking questions that I think the audience wants answers to," Lorraine responded, gesturing toward the crowd. "Surely you can understand why people might be curious about your thoughts on this." "What I understand," Michael said, his words measured and deliberate, "is that you invited me here under the pretense of discussing my book and my career, and instead, you're trying to create some kind of controversy where none exists." Lorraine laughed, but it sounded forced. "Oh, come on, Michael. Don't be so sensitive. This is just a conversation." That word hung in the air between them. Sensitive. You could see Michael's expression change, his eyes narrowing behind his glasses. "Sensitive?" he repeated, his voice dropping lower. "I've been in this industry since before you were born, love. I've faced real criticism, real challenges. What I don't appreciate is being ambushed on morning television by someone who thinks they're doing investigative journalism." The crew members behind the cameras exchanged nervous glances. This was definitely not going according to plan. Lorraine shifted in her seat, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. "I think you're being a bit dramatic, Michael," she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "These are perfectly reasonable questions. Maybe if you can't handle a little bit of scrutiny, you shouldn't be doing interviews." The audience gasped. Several people put their hands over their mouths in shock. That was a line that absolutely should not have been crossed, especially with someone of Michael Caine's stature and experience. Michael's face had turned slightly red now, and his hands gripped the arms of the chair. "Excuse me?" he said quietly, dangerously. "What did you just say to me?" Lorraine seemed to realize she might have gone too far, but pride or stubbornness kept her from apologizing. "I'm just saying that if you agree to come on a talk show, you should expect to answer questions. All kinds of questions. There's a difference between asking questions and being disrespectful. Michael shot back, his voice rising now. And you've crossed that line? You're sitting there, acting like you're some sort of moral authority, when all you're doing is trying to get a reaction for your ratings. That's not fair, Lorraine protested, but her voice wavered slightly. I'm doing my job. Your job? Michael let out a harsh laugh. Your job is to make guests feel comfortable, to have interesting conversations, to entertain people. Your job is not to ambush someone who's given their entire life to their craft and try to paint them as some kind of villain. Lorraine's face had flushed now, too. I never called you a villain, Michael. You're putting words in my mouth. No, but that's what you're implying, isn't it? Michael said, leaning forward. You bring up films from decades ago. You question my choices. You use words like responsibility and influence, as if I've done something wrong. Well, let me tell you something. I have nothing to apologize for. I've played hundreds of characters, and I brought truth to every single one of them. If you can't separate an actor from their roles, that's your problem, not mine. The producer was frantically gesturing from off-camera, trying to signal Lorraine to move on to a different topic, but she either didn't see or chose to ignore it. But Michael, she pressed on, don't you think times have changed? Don't you think maybe some of those films wouldn't be made today? Of course. Times have changed. Michael's voice boomed across the studio now. That's the whole bloody point. Films are snapshots of their time. They're supposed to reflect the world as it was, not as we wish it had been. That's what makes them valuable as art and as historical documents. So you don't think representation matters? Lorraine asked, her tone accusatory. Michael stood up abruptly, startling everyone on set. Don't you dare twist my words like that. Of course representation matters, but you're not actually interested in having that discussion, are you? You just want a soundbite, something you can clip and share on social media. Michael Caine refuses to apologize, or whatever headline you've already got written in your head. Sit down, Michael, Lorraine said, trying to regain control of the situation. Let's just calm down and have a proper conversation. Calm down? Michael's voice was incredulous. You insult me. You question my integrity. You ambush me with accusations disguised as questions, and then you tell me to calm down? Who the hell do you think you are? The audience was completely silent now, watching this legendary actor and this popular host in what was rapidly becoming one of the most uncomfortable moments in daytime television history. Lorraine stood up as well, her own temper clearly flaring now. I think I'm someone who's asking legitimate questions that the public deserves answers to. And frankly, Michael, your reaction is quite telling. If you had nothing to hide, why are you getting so defensive? That was it. That was the moment everything completely fell apart. Nothing to hide? Michael's voice was shaking with anger now. I've lived my entire life in the public eye. I've given interview after interview. I've been honest about my successes and my failures. I've never pretended to be perfect. But I will not stand here and be interrogated by someone who's decided I'm guilty before I even open my mouth. Nobody said you were guilty of anything, Lorraine said, but her voice lacked conviction now. Then what exactly are you accusing me of? Michael demanded. Go on, say it plainly. Stop dancing around it with your clever little questions. If you think I've done something wrong, have the courage to say it directly. Lorraine opened her mouth, then closed it again. She looked flustered, caught between wanting to defend her line of questioning and realizing that she'd pushed too hard and lost control of the interview. I thought so, Michael said, shaking his head in disgust. You don't actually have an accusation, do you? You just wanted to create drama, to make yourself look tough and relevant by taking shots at an easy target. Well, congratulations, Lorraine. You've succeeded in making a complete fool of yourself. How dare you speak to me like that? Lorraine said, her voice rising to match his. This is my show, and I'll ask whatever questions I damn well please. Then you can ask them to an empty chair. Michael snapped back, reaching up to remove the small microphone clipped to his lapel. Because I'm not sitting here for another second of this nonsense. Fine. Walk off then, Lorraine shouted, all pretense of professionalism abandoned now. Run away instead of answering difficult questions. Very mature, Michael. Michael stopped in the middle of removing his microphone and turned to face her fully, his eyes blazing with anger. Difficult questions? You think these are difficult questions? I've been asked about my craft by the greatest film critics in the world. I've discussed acting technique with directors who revolutionize cinema. I've had thoughtful, challenging conversations with journalists who actually respected their profession. This, he gestured between them, this is not a difficult question. This is a hack trying to manufacture controversy because they don't have the skill to conduct a real interview. The entire crew stood frozen, unsure whether to keep filming or stop. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of this spectacular meltdown. "You're out of line," Lorraine said, but her voice cracked slightly. "You can't talk to me like that." "I can and I will," Michael replied firmly, finally getting the microphone off and dropping it onto his chair. "Because somebody needs to tell you that this isn't journalism. It's not entertainment. It's just mean-spirited point scoring. You brought me here to tear me down, and when I refused to play along, you got nasty. Well, I'm 70+ years old, and I don't have time for this rubbish anymore. Nobody forced you to come on the show." Lorraine shot back, her face red with anger and embarrassment. "If you can't handle being challenged, maybe you should just retire already." Several people in the audience audibly gasped at that comment. Even some of the crew members looked shocked. That was an incredibly cruel thing to say to anyone, let alone a legendary performer like Michael Caine. Michael went very still for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was cold and controlled. "You know what the saddest part of all this is, Lorraine? I actually used to respect you. I thought you were one of the good ones. Someone who genuinely cared about having meaningful conversations with people. But today you've shown me exactly who you really are. You're willing to hurt someone, to disrespect their legacy, just to get a few more viewers or a few more clicks. That's not just unprofessional. It's cruel." "Oh, don't act like you're some innocent victim," Lorraine retorted, but there was a defensive quality to her voice now. "You're a wealthy, privileged man who's had an incredible career. Forgive me if I don't feel sorry for you having to answer a few tough questions." "This has nothing to do with sympathy," Michael said, his voice weary now alongside the anger. "This is about basic human decency and professional conduct. But clearly, those concepts are foreign to you." He turned toward the exit, and Lorraine called after him. "Where are you going? We're not finished." Michael stopped and looked back over his shoulder. "Oh, we're very much finished. I'm done. Find someone else to bully for your entertainment." "I'm not bullying you," Lorraine protested loudly. "God, you're so sensitive. Can't take a bit of criticism." That word, again. Michael turned fully around one last time, and his expression was one of pure contempt. "You keep using that word. Sensitive. As if caring about being treated with respect is some kind of weakness. Let me tell you something, Lorraine. Being sensitive to cruelty, to rudeness, to deliberate disrespect, that's not a flaw. What is a flaw is thinking you have the right to treat people poorly just because you have a microphone and a camera." "I have every right to ask questions," Lorraine shouted, fully losing her composure now. "You're just mad because I didn't spend the whole time kissing your arse and telling you how wonderful you are." "No," Michael said, his voice cutting through her shouting with quiet intensity. "I'm angry because you lied to me. You lied to my agent when you booked this appearance. You said you wanted to discuss my book and my career. You said it would be a friendly, enjoyable conversation. Instead, you set a trap. You planned this ambush, probably days ago. You decided you were going to come after me, and you did it in the most cowardly way possible, by pretending it was something else entirely." "That's not true," Lorraine said, but she couldn't quite meet his eyes. "I didn't plan anything." "Don't insult my intelligence on top of everything else," Michael said sharply. "Those questions didn't come out of nowhere. You prepared them. You chose to focus on controversy instead of content. You made a calculated decision to try to embarrass me on your show. Well, the only person who should be embarrassed here is you." Someone in the audience started clapping, and then a few others joined in. They were clapping for Michael. Lorraine's face went from red to almost purple. "Stop that!" she snapped at the audience. "This is my show. My show. Then act like a proper host instead of a bully," someone from the audience called out, and there were murmurs of agreement. Lorraine whirled around, looking betrayed by her own audience. "You don't understand what happened here," she said desperately. "He's just trying to avoid accountability." "Accountability for what?" Michael challenged, stepping back toward the stage. "You still haven't said what I'm supposed to be accountable for. Playing characters in films? Doing my job as an actor? Having a successful career? What exactly is my crime here, Lorraine? She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The truth was, she didn't have a clear answer. She'd been trying to create controversy for the sake of controversy, and it had backfired spectacularly. That's what I thought, Michael said quietly. You know, the really tragic thing about all this is that you could have had a wonderful interview today. I would have talked about my book, about the actors I've worked with, about what I've learned over 60 years in this business. I would have shared stories that your audience would have loved. Instead, you chose this. You chose confrontation over conversation. You chose cruelty over kindness. And for what? A viral moment? A few headlines? You're being dramatic, Lorraine said weakly. But all the fight had gone out of her voice. This is just how interviews work nowadays. No, Michael said firmly. This is how bad interviews work. Good interviewers know how to challenge their guests without disrespecting them. They know how to ask tough questions without ambushing people. They know how to create interesting television without resorting to cheap tricks and gotcha journalism. He shook his head slowly, looking genuinely disappointed. I've been in this industry since 1956. I've seen it all. But I've never been treated quite like this. Not by the British press, not by American talk shows, not by anyone. So, congratulations, Lorraine. You've achieved something truly unique. You've made me want to walk off a set for the first time in my entire career. Oh, just go then, Lorraine shouted, her frustration and embarrassment boiling over. Nobody's stopping you. Leave. I intend to, Michael replied calmly, that cold control back in his voice. But before I do, I want everyone watching this to understand something. When someone treats you with disrespect, when someone lies to you and tries to manipulate you, you don't have to sit there and take it. It doesn't matter how famous they are, how powerful they are, or what platform they have. You have every right to stand up for yourself and walk away. That's not being sensitive. That's called having self-respect. He started toward the exit again, and this time Lorraine didn't call after him. She just stood there, looking lost and angry and embarrassed all at once. The cameras caught everything. Her trembling hands, her flushed face, the way her eyes darted around as if looking for someone to help her. This isn't over, she finally called out, but it sounded desperate rather than threatening. You can't just walk off like this. What about the audience? What about the people who came here to see you? Michael paused at the edge of the stage and addressed the audience directly. I apologize to all of you. I'm sorry that you came here expecting to see a pleasant conversation and instead witnessed this mess. But I want you to know that I'm not walking out on you. I'm walking out on behavior that I cannot and will not tolerate. There's a difference. The audience applauded again, more enthusiastically this time. Someone shouted, "Good for you, Michael," and others echoed the sentiment. Lorraine looked absolutely devastated now, watching her audience turn against her in real time. "You're all being ridiculous," she said to the crowd. "He's manipulating you. Can't you see that? We see everything just fine," an older woman in the front row said clearly. "And what we see is that you treated that man terribly." "I was doing my job," Lorraine insisted, her voice breaking slightly. "I was asking questions." "No," Michael said from his position near the exit. "You were attacking. There's a difference between questioning and attacking, and you crossed that line repeatedly. A real journalist knows where that line is. Clearly, you don't." "Screw you, Michael," Lorraine said, and you could hear the tears of frustration in her voice now. "You're just an old man who can't handle the modern world." The audience gasped again at this personal attack. Even the crew looked uncomfortable now, some of them looking down at their feet in secondhand embarrassment. Michael's expression didn't change. If anything, he looked sad rather than angry now. "And there it is. When you can't win an argument with facts or logic, you resort to personal insults. Age, in this case. You're proving my point better than I ever could, Lorraine. This isn't about journalism or accountability or any of the high-minded reasons you claimed. This is about you wanting to feel powerful by tearing someone else down. And when it didn't work, when I didn't crumble or apologize for things I haven't done, you showed your true colors." "Get out!" Lorraine screamed, completely losing control now. "Get out of my studio! You're not welcome here!" "I'm already leaving," Michael said quietly. "But I'm leaving on my terms, not yours. I'm leaving because I choose to, Not because you're throwing me out. Remember that. I don't care, Lorraine shouted, tears actually streaming down her face now. I don't care about you or your stupid book or your stupid career. Just get out. Michael took one last look at her, and his expression was almost pitying. You know what? I genuinely feel sorry for you. Because one day, you're going to look back on this moment and realize what you threw away. You had a chance to have a meaningful conversation with someone who's lived an extraordinary life. Instead, you chose this. And you'll have to live with that choice. With that, Michael Caine turned and walked off the set. His footsteps echoed in the suddenly quiet studio. You could hear him greeting someone backstage, his voice polite and controlled, as if he hadn't just been in the middle of an intense confrontation. Back on the set, Lorraine stood alone, mascara running down her face, her chest heaving with emotion. The audience sat in stunned silence. The crew didn't know whether to keep filming or cut to commercial. Everything had fallen apart so completely that nobody knew what to do next. Fine, Lorraine shouted into the void, even though Michael was long gone. Fine. That's fine. We don't need him anyway. We'll do the rest of the show without him. But her voice lacked any conviction. She looked around at the audience, at the cameras, at her crew, and seemed to realize all at once how badly this had gone. How badly she had handled it. Right? She said, trying to pull herself together and failing. Well, that was certainly unexpected. You treated him horribly, someone from the audience said, and others murmured in agreement. Lorraine's face crumpled. No, I had to ask those questions. Why? Another audience member challenged. Why did you have to attack him like that? I wasn't attacking him, Lorraine protested. But even she didn't sound convinced anymore. It's complicated. You don't understand. We understand perfectly, the first woman said. We understand that you invited a beloved actor onto your show and then ambushed him with accusations and personal attacks. We understand that when he tried to defend himself, you got worse instead of better. We understand that you told him to calm down and called him sensitive and then suggested he should retire. We all saw it, Lorraine. We were right here. Lorraine looked like she wanted to argue, but what could she say? Everything that woman had just listed had actually happened. It was all on camera. There was no denying it, no spinning it into something else. I think I need to take a break, Lorraine said weakly, and she walked off the set in the opposite direction that Michael had gone, leaving her confused crew and disappointed audience behind. The cameras kept rolling for a few more seconds, capturing the empty set, the abandoned chairs, and the shocked faces of everyone who had just witnessed one of the most dramatic interview disasters in television history.